All right, here's what I want you to do while we watch this next one. I want you, while you're watching this, think of ways that this could be modified for hard of hearing so that it's not so much talking. And is there a way to do that so that that noise level of all the kids talking at once isn't as high that it would send everybody running and screaming, or kids on the spectrum? So I think there are ways to work around it. We just have to brainstorm. This is a high school teacher. And I have started volunteering and going in classrooms and trying whole brain teaching in different classrooms. So I'm the one to introduce it, and I've done it with lots of different groups. I did it at an alternative school with kids who pretty much had given up on learning anything, and they had a lot of fun. And although they tested me, it was really good. And then I've just done it in regular classrooms. Where we only have one student who is deaf. So it worked out really well. But think about what if you had a whole class of hard of hearing or...
Today we're going to learn about the slopes of lines. Now, there's 4 types of lines. You have lines that go up, lines that go down, horizontal lines, and vertical lines. The south, about the 4 types of lines we have. Teach. When Joe stands in this line and he walks to the right, he goes down, so our slope is negative. So, hear me please. When Joe is standing on the line that goes up and walks up the line, the slope is positive. When Joe stands on the line and he walks down, the slope is negative. South, tell the north about the 2 types of lines we just discussed, how the slope is positive when Joe goes up and negative when Joe goes down. Teach. Okay. When Joe walks to the right, he doesn't go up or down, so there is no change. So the slope of that line is 0. Now when Joe stands on a vertical line and he walks to the right, he falls off the line, breaks into so many pieces that he is undefined. We cannot even define him as Joe anymore. So on a horizontal line, no change, the slope is 0. On a vertical line, Joe falls off and defined. North, please tell the south about the horizontal and vertical slopes of lines. Teach. Okay. Right there, but I didn't hear a lot of people having Joe fall off the line and break so many pieces. So I'm going to take a point for that. Now, hear me one last time here. There's 4 types of lines. Lines that go up when the slope is positive. Lines that go down when the slope is negative. We have horizontal lines, the slope is 0. And when we have vertical lines, Joe falls off the line. Breaks into so many pieces, he is good. Now it's time for your quiz. There's your quiz. Now you're not going to say anything. When I point to one of these graphs up here, you're just going to tell me if the slope is positive, negative, 0, or undefined. Okay. Let's go with this one. Joe's walking up. Slope is 0 because there's no change for Joe. He doesn't go up or down. Negative. Excellent. I'm going to give you a point for that. So it looks like you guys are understanding how to figure out what slope is. Nice job today.
That's the end of that. So what do you think? Anybody got, all the kids were involved. Nobody was off task. Very cool, but how do we modify it for those kids who are going to go nuts when there's all that talking in the room? And I think, if we were talking over here, if they whisper, then the kids who are hard of hearing won't be able to hear. Is there a way to work around this? And that's why I wanted to show it to you, because this is, it's really taking off and becoming pretty popular in classrooms. I think it's cool, but we've got to think of a way to modify it because of all the noise. So I love all the mirroring and all the actions that they put into that. And if you go on the website and look, there's so much application that teaching the kids the signs for a lot of this would be a really cool way to incorporate this into a classroom. So it's just something to think about. I'm trying to throw out not only behavior intervention planning, but also some teaching ideas that are hot off the press, so to speak. And now I have to get back into the PowerPoint. All right. Anybody want to discuss it? Throw out an idea? Because I had time to talk about this. What do you think? Are you guys just ready to go on? Just kind of, you're processing. I know, and I don't want to go too fast.
Not exactly the same as this, but I was at a workshop and it was just focused on reading like RTI. But what I've been doing to get the kids keep them all engaged, which I think maybe goes back to the one kid that liked to blurt out the answers, was I give them a thinking time, and then I think too. So I'm mirroring, like, say if I have a sentence and I want them to come up with a sentence with, we're going to use is and we're going to use the ing verb. Let's think of a sentence. I have my structure up there. When they're ready, they give me a thumbs up. And now they like when I time them. So I'm like, I'm going to set it for 1 minute. I want some thumbs up, so we all give our thumbs up. And then one way maybe for the kid that blurts all the time is you can discuss it with your partner for a second and give the answer. And then that way everyone kind of has that confidence and like, all right, I know the answer, we have the same answer, we're on the same page. And then, if they have the thumbs up, then I think that they know they have an answer to give me. So it's kind of not exactly.
No, but I like that.
But
and
giving them a thinking time so everybody has to think. Because you always have the kid in your class that has the answer every single time, and everyone's like, well, they know the answer, they have their hands up, I don't have to think.
Good point, yeah.
Think, then giving them a share time, so that gives them the confidence to say, okay, I at least shared my answer with this one person, and if that person has a lot of self-confidence, I can at least know my answers right to this person. And then when it's time to share, or sometimes they'll be like, okay, everybody give me the answer if it's all the same, and then give them a cue, and then they'll all answer at the same time. And it gives a chance for the kids that are more hard of hearing and are going to talk, and the kids that are going to sign. Because sometimes the kids that have more speech and that are hard of hearing will talk over the kids that are signing because they're not paying attention to what's going on. So it's kind of not exactly the same as that.
No, but I like that, and I like the modeling, and that's what I like so much about this, and how I thought it might be applicable to you guys. And I know I said earlier, and someone pointed out to me Braille, and I don't know where my brain was. Sorry, I said you could put Braille on, and I was like, what am I? The parents don't need it. Sorry. That was ADHD moment for you. But I like what you're saying about that, just to model the thinking time and give the kids a thinking time. And then for a kid like Terry, who interrupts and is going for peer attention, they can get that peer attention by talking to the person beside them. So you've built that in.
And with our hearing loss issues, there has to be adaptations from the beginning in that we can't say class. So when we have our kids talking to each other, partnering, I have to have some visual signal, a light, or something, because class doesn't get a yes.
No, I know.
Doesn't even get seen. So, there just has to be some adaptations from the beginning. I think they love it, and I actually teach this very lesson. It's very fun, but You just have to think about that. Our getting back to ground zero, starting
Yeah.
back is a whole different thing.
Well, here's my challenge to you guys. If you guys come up with a way to adapt this and challenge it, send it in to wholebrainteaching.com, because I've now got them interested in how to adapt this for kids who are hard of hearing or deaf. You know, get somebody to volunteer to be videotaped. They want people to send it in. Everything on their website is free. So they've got tons of ideas. But yeah, flipping the light. And the response is, you know, whatever you want it to be. But what a great way to get involved in this and become part of this whole brain teaching and be able to make some videos to help. Because I wrote to them and asked them for closed caption, and they're now interested in that. So what I liked about this is it involves the other side of the brain. So instead of just sitting and getting, it's the kids being actively engaged and using that. So it uses the limbic side and all of those different activities that we really want the kids to pay attention. The teacher prep time and coming up with ways to modify this, that's the con for this. But I think it's cool, and I think it had some implications for kids like Terry and other kids in the room. Now, our end goal for Terry and for all of our kids is for them to start managing their own behavior, that self-monitoring. Remember, I told you John Hattie said that's the #1 way to change behavior, is to have kids monitor their own behavior and their own grades for reading and writing and math and all of that, to keep track of their own grades. You also know that when you write your behavior intervention plan, there has to be a contextual fit. Whatever you ask the classroom teacher to do, they have to be willing and able to do it. If it's something with the parents, they have to be willing and able. So you have to think about all of that. You also have to think about crisis management. If a kid is hurting somebody, you're not going to collect data for 10 days or 5 days or 4 days or 3 days. If somebody's getting hurt, we've got to put a crisis plan in place right away. Once everybody's safe, then we can collect that data. We have to figure out how we're going to implement it, who's going to implement it, who's going to check up on that person. Now, we talked earlier about sometimes people call you 1 day later and say it didn't work. I was so frustrated with that as a behavior therapist, and George Sagai is a good friend of mine, and one night, late at night, I was lamenting the fact that I had had yet another email from somebody that I had just been to see. They didn't even try it for more than a day and had written and said it doesn't work. And then another thing that I wrote to him about was I'd go visit somebody a month later thinking that they were implementing the plan, and when I get back a month later, I find out they quit it 2 days after they started and decided it didn't work. So for a whole nother month, they've been going back to doing what they were doing before. And George told me this really great rule of thumb, and ever since then I've started using it, and it works much better than my old method of just coming back a month later. When you sit down with a behavior support team and you come up with a plan, and a classroom teacher is implementing that plan, or a parent is implementing that plan, whoever's implementing it, you call them 1 day later. How's it going? Then you call them 3 days later. How's it going? Everything going okay? Do you need any help? Do you need to tweak it? Then you call them 5 days later. Then 7 days later. See where I'm going? And by the time you've done all that, a month has passed, and you go back, and that way they didn't slip back into their old habits, and you were constantly checking out. It was more work for me as the behavior therapist to be calling people, but I just had a list of who I had to call each day and what I had to call and talk to them about, and they knew it was going to be quick. Sometimes I would do an email, but the call. So ever since George told me that and I started doing it, I had better follow through on intervention plans. So that 1, 3, 5, 7, and then by then we've almost gone, and we've got 9 more days until we meet again. So on that 9th day, that's about a month later. So of school days. So it really helped. So I just wanted to throw that out to you guys, because that was something I struggled with, and that really helped. Now this is from Cronin Horner's book. You have pages 6 to 9. You have all of this information and some top information from their book, How to Build a Student Support Team. And I know you guys already have your student support teams, but I thought it might be good for you to be able to share this with everyone in the school, who all should be part of this team, because sometimes we forget some important people. The bus driver could be a very important person. I don't know why that went all by itself there. So the bus driver could be a very important person that's part of this team. All of these probation officers, social workers, those kind of people, action team members. But here's the rule of thumb. You never want more than 14 people. How many of you have been in a meeting with more than 14 people and you're still there at 6 o'clock at night because there's too many people? It's counterproductive to have more than 14. So focus group research says keep it to less than 14. 8 to 12 is ideal to get to a good plan. So I know I've sat through a lot of meetings and I've sat and counted all the people in the room and there's like 21, 22 people. And we never get anywhere because there's too much information coming in. So you can see how different kids are going to have different groups from that. And I just thought that was good information. Remember me teaching you about the functional behavior assessment tools last time? And I told you that we came up with a better way to do this. This is Alberto and Troutman's old antecedent behavior consequence form. But when you're not the person going in to observe and you're responsible for looking at someone else's data, this is what we were getting. People would write the behavior started at 8 o'clock and ended at 8:30. It started at 9 o'clock and ended at 9:30. It started at 9:45 and ended at 10:45. I don't know about the kids you guys work with, but the kids I work with are not so compliant that they provide those behavioral learning opportunities in convenient 30-minute increments. So I know this isn't good information. And then teachers would write reading, math, social studies, but then the next day they'd write open court. And I have no idea if it was open court reading, open court spelling, open court math, who knows what else open court happens to have. So I'd have to call up the teacher and say, okay, on Tuesday, you wrote open court at 10:15. Was that spelling or was that something else? Antecedent setting event, we would get a narrative. And if we were lucky, we could figure out what was really going on, but sometimes not so much. On behavior, I always knew how mad they were at the kid by how hard they pressed with the pencil and how much they wrote on the back of the sheet. And it was hard to put things into categories. And then they always focused on punishment in this one, under consequence, not the fact that the kid got peer attention or adult attention or got sent to the office so they got out of work. And then they always said they didn't stop or they got worse. So this was the old forms. And so last time I was here, I shared with you that we came up with keying the format. And you key it, so you sit down with the team and come up with all the possible antecedents, and you define them with everybody. And then you come up with all the possible contexts, the 3 behaviors or less that you're going to focus on, consequences, and define those. And you define everything, and then you make sure you mention to them how important it is that they write down the time the behavior actually began and the time the behavior actually ended. Not the whole class period, because the kid probably didn't burp the alphabet the whole class period. So you define what do we mean by throwing objects, and you have to be really explicit. What do we mean by transitions, redirections? There's no right or wrong answer as long as you define it for your behavior support team. Now, I like for regular classroom teachers to collect their own data, whoever's with the kids to collect the data themselves, because when you're the behavior specialist or the behavior therapist and you sit in the back of a classroom on a reported kid who supposedly has behavior every day, what happens the day you go in to observe? They have the best day they ever had in their entire life. So our job is to help everybody collect data on the kids that they're working with. And as a teacher, as a classroom teacher, don't you get frustrated, those of you that are classroom teachers, when the behavior specialist comes in and the kid doesn't do what they've always done every other day. And it's called the Hawthorne effect, and it happens. So I had to come up with a plan. My team had to come up with a plan to make it so easy that we could get 500 people a year to collect data with us. So we made up these forms that I shared with you last time. Behavior started at 8:17, ended at 8:22, and it was behavior B. Now that's all I have to write down in the heat of the moment. Those 3 things, what behavior it was, what time it started, what time it ended, because we've keyed all this. Later on, when I have time, I can go back and I can fill in that whole behavior chain. And then I showed you what to do if a new behavior started because of the consequence. So this is a verbal reprimand, and the teacher went over and gave them a verbal reprimand, and the minute they gave them a verbal reprimand, the kid bit them, which is a different behavior than what they were doing in the first place. So this is actually a new behavior chain with this consequence becoming the antecedent to this behavior. When that happens, you just draw a squiggly line and show that came from here, so it just happened to be over here. You have to hand score that one. But your behavior intervention plan that you write has to match the data. And I'm going to show you some cool stuff in just a little bit. If you look on page 16, this is Renee. I'm starting with a fairly bizarre one. If you read Renee's behavior intervention plan, this is a real case that I had. Renee was 6 years old. She was having non-compliant behavior. Like if you looked up non-compliant, Renee's picture would be there. Before we got there, they had had another behavior specialist come in, and the other behavior specialist had told them every time Renee says no, pick her up and put her in a basket hold. I know. Like, does that pass the stranger test? You know, if someone walked in, would they not think that was bizarre? Yeah, they would. But that's what this behavior specialist, honest to goodness, told this team to do. So guess what Renee was doing all day, every day? Sitting on the floor with somebody behind her with her arms crossed, their legs over her legs. I'm like, is she in danger? Is anyone else in danger? So the whole plan that we came up with for Renee, now that was the behavior intervention plan we inherited. So we had to change it. So here's what we came up with, and I want to let you talk for a little bit. I'll tell you what we did, but I bet you could come up with even more. We put a token economy in place for Renee, where we knew what floated her boat was putting together 25-piece puzzles. She loved 25-piece puzzles, could put them together. This was something she was good at. We bought a timer at Walmart that worked for Renee, and we had her set the timer for 5 minutes. And she had 5 minutes. She'd work for, when she got 5 bracelets, this was the token economy, and the bracelets were pot holder loops. When she got 5 bracelets, she got to go have a 5-minute break. She would set the timer, do the puzzles. I needed her to be able to put the puzzles away quickly, because if she put the puzzles away quickly, she got another bracelet, one step closer to her next break. I ran out and did this the day I went there because I thought this kid has got to stop being held. Normally I don't intervene right away, but in my mind this was a crisis because a kid is being held for no good reason. So I ran down to Walmart, I bought a timer, I bought a whole bunch of 25-piece puzzles, I bought one of those little short TV trays, pot holder loops. I was able to get everything at Walmart for less than 20 bucks. And it was money well spent in my mind. So I came back, I taught Renee, every time you do something I ask you to do, you get a bracelet. Well, before long, the staff is having to go run off stuff because Renee is doing more work than they've ever had her do before, and they don't have enough work prepared for the day because this kid bought into the bracelets and getting the break to go do the puzzles. So if she could get the TV tray put away before the timer quit, she got another bracelet. So she watched the timer. She knew that when the timer went off, she had to put the tray away. Teacher labels all the appropriate behavior with a pot holder loop, so I had to model for the teacher. Oh, good job looking at me, good job. Good job. Teacher gives tons of booster shots about appropriate behavior, ignores the non-compliance, and just gets her to work. Now, this was the one time I was so frustrated because I modeled this all day that day, and Renee was working like you wouldn't believe. I shared it with Mom. I had bought Mom double of everything I bought for the school, and I bought her the pot holder. Mom was so excited. She's like, oh my gosh, she won't ever sit at the table. I'm going to do this. I come back a month later, And this was before I knew about calling them 1 day later, 3 days later, 5 days later. And I walk in the room and they're holding Renee. And I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, we tried that thing that you had, but it was just too much work. Too much work. To them, it was easier to hold Renee in a basket hold than to do this. And this was the time I really broke down and like, I'm having the phone calls with George late at night, like, what did you do with people like that? So I want you to think about a kid you know, like Renee, not that you inherited that bad of a behavior intervention plan, but think about a behavior intervention plan that came into you that was so bizarre and you had to change it right away because it was a bad behavior intervention plan. Renee's was bad. Holding her in a basket hold, very bad. So I'll give you some time to think about the kid that you got, a really bad behavior intervention plan. What could you do to change it up, remembering that what I did with Renee was a change? Anybody talk about Renee? Anybody have a story they'd like to share about a behavior intervention plan that needs to be changed and what you're going to do to change it?
Your data collection. I think a lot of the piece of the data collection is they think they're writing something down on paper and so it's there. And that's their data, where it doesn't give us anything.
Yeah.
And I think being able to circle or go through and just write an A, B, C or whatever.
You've got to make it so easy, and I can't wait. Maybe I'll just show you early. I can't wait to show you what I've changed. Maybe it's coming. Let me just find it real quick. I have it later on, but let me show it to you now. Well, heck, I don't know where it went. I'll just do this other way. Last year I shared with you a really easy data tool that was an Excel spreadsheet that was ABC data collection. Since I saw you last, a lady volunteered to change it and make it even more user-friendly. And it is now so easy for teachers to collect their own data. It's very user-friendly. This is just the printout. Let me make it bigger and let me go back to the main page. Sorry, I had it open. Okay, this is what it looks like when you go to my website now and pull this up. It's called the FBA Data Tool. It's a free download off my website. You go in and you click demographics and you put in the student's name, their grade. You can see how easy this is. You used to have to read a page and a half of directions to do my old one. This one has no directions separate. They're right here. So you put in the teacher, the person responsible, the grade and gender of the student. Then you go to the next green square, which is date and time. You put in the time school starts, the time school ends, and you don't have to put in AM or PM anymore because the computer knows. You enter the date, you'll begin data collection, and then the school year, 2011, 2012, or 2012, 2013. And then you choose criteria. So it'll default to this just to give people ideas. But what you do is right here, let's say you've got a kid who's in, they have a homeroom. So you just type whatever you want to change this to. And you go through and you change all the context, all the antecedents, the behavior. Well, I'll come back to behavior, the consequences. And then student reaction is locked because there's only 3 things that can happen. The kid can either stop the behavior as a result of your consequence, the kid can continue the behavior because of your consequence, or the behavior can intensify. If a new behavior starts, you just start a new line because that's a whole new chain. I limit people to 3 behaviors. You know how people want 8? Well, one time, just for grins, I had a clinic with a one-way mirror and I had no distractions. And I had a teacher in a room working with a child who definitely had 8 behaviors or more. So I picked 8 behaviors, I defined them, and I sat on the other side of the one-way mirror trying to collect data on 8 behaviors. And I just tried to do it for 3 hours. I thought, let me see if I can do this for 3 hours. Folks, I couldn't do it, and I had nothing to distract me. So how the heck could somebody who's teaching keep track of, especially if it's a very busy teacher, I say let's pick one behavior. Let's get that one behavior. What one behavior, if it went away, your life would be better? And let's focus on that first, because what happens, you take care of that one behavior and a lot of the little ones disappear, you know, because they were meeting the same needs. Then you look and see, did another gopher head pop up that you need to, because it's kind of all the gopher game anyway. You take care of one and another one pops up, or you take care of one kid and another one pops up. But the most I'll let anybody try to take data on is 3. So you put those in, and then you click paper form, and it will print this out so that all the teachers have to do is write the ABC. You could even, you know, if you wanted to redo it and have them circle it, they put the start time, the end time, and the behavior, and then later on they go back and fill this in. And then you click table of contents, you click report, and you get a report. This one doesn't have very much data in it, but you get all of this graphed out. Let me show you one that's got more in it, because don't save. Let me show you. Maddie. Here's Maddie Jones. Maddie Jones is a fake name. Well, sure. I'll add one to Maddie's. Whoops. It's going to open twice. Let me close that one. There we go. So you get this graph. I'll show you this, and then I'll add one for you. So it gives you time of day. So you can sit down with your behavior support team and put this up on a wall, and everybody can sit and see this, that Maddie has trouble at 8 o'clock and at 3 o'clock. So that's beginning of the day and end of the day. And what's nice about that, because when you ask somebody, when did this behavior show up, frequently they'll say all day, every day. And when you have the data in front of you, now I can brainstorm and say, okay, it's beginning of the day and end of the day. That's transition time, and we know transition times are difficult for lots of kids. What can we do to help her transition better? And then we look at day of the week. Now that only works if you collect enough information for day of the week. In Maddie's case, Maddie's a real kid, but in Maddie's case we collected 10 days of data, because we wanted 2 Mondays, 2 Tuesdays, 2 Wednesdays, 2 Thursdays, and 2 Fridays. You do not have to collect 10 days of data. That's not a hard and fast. We just wanted 10 days because we wanted 2 examples. Mondays and Fridays are more difficult for Maddie, and what that helped us do was figure out why Mondays and Fridays were more difficult for Maddie. And it was the transition from home to school and school to home, because the weekend was very different for her than school structured setting. So it let us be able to talk about those things. What is nice is when the parents are sitting there, and Maddie's mom saw this and she's like, oh my gosh, I know why the morning's so bad, because we have such a disorganized start to the day, and she's upset when she leaves the house. So we didn't have to say anything to Mom. Mom was like, oh, I need to organize her exit from home. I mean, she didn't say it eloquent, but she just said, I need to make sure she's ready to go in the morning and she's not running out the door about to miss the bus because she can't find her left shoe. So Mom started working on ways to organize her. And then here's day of the week. Here's the event duration. So you can look at this. They thought behavior A was the #1 behavior, and behavior A was, I have to find the behavior on here. Anyway, come to find out, behavior A was not the #1 behavior. I'd have to go back to the thing. Oh, it says right there, tantrum. It seemed like it because the intensity was so high, but if you look at the overall, tantrums only happened 4% of the time. She only had 12 minutes of tantrums total in 10 days. So that's not really very long. What was really more of a problem was the off-task behavior, which was 66% of the data. And then cussing, which is bad, 30% of the day. So those two were more frequent than the tantrum. The tantrum intensity was just higher. This is the student reaction to consequences with each behavior. Here's the context, and then the context paired with each behavior. It doesn't take very long to be able to read these and understand what they're telling you. Here's the antecedent paired with the behavior. So you can see behavior B almost always happens during transitions. So that's really helpful when you're sitting and working up a behavior intervention plan. And here's what I tell resistant teachers. I show them somebody's data like Maddie's, and I say, I'm going to be able to help you like this. And I show them Maddie's before data and after data. So Maddie had such high behaviors before. We put an intervention in place, carried it out for 1 month. 1 month later, we went back and took another data sample, and Maddie was way down here. A month after that, Maddie was 0 for behaviors. So I'll share that with teachers. So let me take you through a whole, what happens is when you put a date in, it puts up a calendar for you, and you just click on the day. The green checks mean that data's been entered. So now it's August 22nd, and I want to enter some more data. So behavior happens. I really wrote it on that sheet of paper, and then the behavior specialist, or at the end of the week, the teacher might write this down. Let's say the behavior started at 9:17. I think I just put a space in there. 9:17, and it ended at, it would probably help if I got a chair. I've got a sound pack digging in, sorry. Here we go. Let's say it stopped at 9:22, we hope. Then the context was A, the antecedent was B, the behavior was C, the consequence. Oh. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So I just put the letter in, and it puts the word right beside it. Consequence, evidently there's not a D consequence. Backspace. B. There. And the student reaction was A. So you get a green check if you've entered everything. And all of this was just written on a sheet of paper. What's nice is if you have a kid in middle school or high school who has 7 different teachers, people only collect data for the time they have the child. Nobody follows the child around. Everybody turns it into one central person who enters it in the computer, and then it becomes part of the graph. So I can go back to the calendar. I've got my green check for August 22nd. I click report, and now that information is added to this graph. So it's very quick, very easy, pretty easy to talk people into using this. When you show them the success you're going to be able to have. So you want to be able to show them this was their behavior before, this was their behavior after. We put all these things in place, and now I'm hopelessly off here. Let's see, there's Renee. There we go. Now let's see if I can get this back on here. There we go. These are just the things that we put in place for Renee. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with Time Timer, which is a really nice visual timer. It doesn't make any noise at all. And the red disappears as time disappears. So the kids can tell that time is, and they have, you can put it on your whiteboard so that it's just up on the board running, and the kids can see the red disappearing. I didn't know if you knew that. I figured you knew about the old time timers.
ISRC gives those out for free for people who need those.
Awesome.
All the time.
Awesome. So now you know who to see if you want one of those. Very cool. These are the potholder loops. I figured the guys probably didn't know what potholder loops were. Us girls made lovely little potholders for our mothers when we were little.
Did Renee get to keep them as they kept going?
She traded a 5 in. So, and then when those got ratty, we'd throw those away. And
The puzzle, the 5 come
yeah.
off, she doesn't have an armful.
yeah, otherwise she'd become distracted by 25 of them on her arm. I used these a lot as a classroom teacher. I just carried them in my pocket, and whenever I caught any child being good, I gave them one, and I just labeled what behavior. And at the end of the day, this was a group contingency, group reward. At the end of the day, I'd walk around and the kids would all drop them in and we'd count them into a coffee can. So it didn't matter that you got 3 and you got 4. What mattered was we were shooting for 35 for the whole class. And if we got to 35, then the whole class got a class reward. And what that does is it gets all the kids in the class working on a common goal, so they'll shush each other and remind each other the rules, and remember when we line up we do this, and they just give each other those reminders because they want the prize at the end of the day. So they don't care who earns 3 and who earns 4, and they're really cheap. I mean, you get a whole bag of like 1,000 of them for $3.97. So if you forget to take them out of your pocket and they go through the washing machine and become this big mess, you're okay. You didn't waste a lot of time. And when I say the TV tray, this is the kind of little TV tray I used, because you want them to be able to put whatever their break was away quickly, because if they can take time piddling with it, they will. So you build that into the token economy. So she could put that away very quickly, and I just gave her one puzzle at a time. But she had a whole stack that we could use so that there was some novelty to it, so it wasn't always. So now I know you guys can get those free. So very cool. I think they're great because they disappear. Now, page 18 is a real BIP that was sent to me. Real kid, I just changed the name. And I put it in a similar form, but this was theirs. What do you notice about it? Is this a good behavior intervention plan? Shouldn't take you very long to come up with an answer. Is this a good behavior intervention plan? No. What's wrong with it? They didn't list a lot of things, but yeah.
All the positive consequences are exactly the same.
All the positive consequences are exactly the same, and it's 5 steps for how to get yourself kicked out of school. I bet you guys think I made this up. I wish I did. This is real. Honest to goodness, this was their plan. Is this reality? Some kids need longer processing time than 1 second. Some of us need longer processing time than 1 second. Honest to goodness, this behavior intervention plan set this kid up for failure. Now, you want to hear the really sad news? I worked for Congress in 1999 and 2000. They sent us all over the United States. What we were doing was collecting data for the reauthorization of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the SLIDEA project. In every state, and we went to more than 1 city, in every state we pulled 200 behavior intervention plans. One of the states that I went to, all 200 behavior intervention plans were this. 5 steps for how to get yourself kicked out of school. Now, I will never tell you what state it was. I will tell you it wasn't Illinois. But honest to goodness, folks, this wasn't that long ago that this was a behavior intervention plan. Now, do I think that state's terrible? Well, I wouldn't want to have a kid with special needs there. But I think they just didn't understand what they were supposed to do, and so they thought a Xerox copy of basically the same thing for every kid. 5 steps for how to get yourself kicked out of school. We did focus group meetings with teachers and parents, and the parent group in one of those cities in that state, a mother of a 5-year-old kid with reactive attachment disorder with tears in her eyes told us how she had to quit her job and stay home to educate her child. And on Monday, somebody showed up with ditto sheets, and on Friday they came back to pick them up. This is happening, and you might get a kid moving in with a behavior intervention plan that looks like this. All right, so what would you do for this kid? I just changed the name, but Otter Be Good, has ADHD. And we have lots of kids who are dual diagnosis. They might be hard of hearing and ADHD, deaf and ADHD. Have you noticed that nobody comes with just one label anymore? The kids with autism have autism, bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder, intellectual disability. You know, it's like more and more and more we're seeing lots of dual diagnoses with kids. There's been a 4,000% increase in bipolar, pediatric bipolar, since 1995. A 4,000% increase in diagnoses. All right, so what would you do with Otter? So works assigned, I'm basically giving you the first part of this. Works assigned, disruptive, out of seat, blurting, non-compliant. I just would loop all those together. Those were the 3 things they were working on. Those are all disruptions, out of seat, blurting, non-compliant. And we know that's to get out of work for Otter. So what would you do? And you can talk to the person beside you on page 19. Use that